Stirring the coffee with chopsticks using the vortex method, the only true way to optimize the taste of your coffee at the molecular level. Good morning. Welcome to the Daybreak Show. I am the Sultan. We'll get started, but first, coffee. Not bad. Mostly decaf today. Decaffeinated beans. Trying to lower my caffeine, and I'm experimenting with caffeine in regards to some migraine headaches and some of the stuff that I go through. So I'm trying to modulate that and see if I can isolate some factors in when and where the vestibular migraines happen. Look that up, vestibular migraine. That'll blow your mind. We have ridden the length and breadth of the land in search of knights who will join me in my court at Camelot. I must speak with your lord and master. What? Ridden on a horse? Yes. You're using coconuts. What? You've got 2 empty halves of coconuts and you're banging them together. 3 years ago, we just had to have Prince's, the music artist, Prince's autopsy results. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia? Not important. 28 years ago, I was associate professor of psychology at a well-known nursing school. The students, all women at the time, were in an associate's degree program in nursing. My class was a non-major class. In other words, it had nothing to do with nursing. And anyone that taught the non-major classes, they were the most dreaded classes. So, in other words, they were very unmotivated. It was like, let's just get through this thing. So my objective was to customize a psych course for the nurses. And it ended up being, Psych 101 ended up being the psychology of nursing. Ended up being a very successful course. Quoting the bald Calvinist, dead people don't turn into angels. Satan doesn't torture people in hell. It's made for him. Jeremiah 29:11 is about going into 70 years of exile. The Bible is not a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy times 1,000. We are not all God's children, and God may indeed give you more than you can handle, so you can turn to Him. The Church Meme Committee. Some of you will see the humor in that. Hillary, after the New Zealand attack, my heart breaks for the Muslim community. Hillary, after the Orlando attack, I'm an ally of the LGBT community. Hillary, after Sri Lanka, praying for Easter worshippers and tourists. And Monday, May 27th, no, this is cut. Monday, May 27th is the United States Memorial Day, the informal start of summer. It's about 1 month away. What could you do for yourself before Memorial Day? I'm going to suggest monk mode. Could be the beginning of unstuck mode for you. I'm going to put a link to monk mode down below so you can get that book. I am going through it now. Must have been a dream. I don't believe where I've been. Come on, let's do it again. Peter Frampton, 1973. Girlfriend from my teenage years, back in the early 70s, 1973, through 1979. She found me from over 40 years ago. The brain retrieves names and places that I thought were lost. We ended up talking, had an hour-long conversation. I didn't realize things needed healing and some closure. We became young adults together. I wasn't even shaving when I met her. She wasn't really even a woman yet. We were children. She bought me my first razor. She was a straight A's kind of person, studious, pretty, good-hearted, a country girl. I remember teaching her how to drive stick at 15 years old. I was a one-man suburban wrecking ball, blazing a T trail through New York. We listened to Neil Diamond, 10cc, the Bee Gees, the Guess Who, Boston, and Peter Frampton played. Had an hour-long talk yesterday. She lives on the other side of the country. And you don't realize when things don't have closure, they just stay open until you close them. And sometimes you have to live with loose ends, things that are not tidied up in a little bow tied up. And I didn't realize how many things were not wrapped up and how many things where there wasn't closure. And I left New York as a young man, and I was with her for all of my teenage years. All of my teenage years. And we're probably going to talk again just to talk. She had been thinking about me recently and found me and had encouraged her son to watch the podcasts, listen to the podcasts. It's interesting. Two lives that went in different directions, and for good reason at the time. Obviously, the first love of your life you never forget. First love of your life you never forget, and you experiment. You have nothing to compare it to, and you blindly feel your way through a relationship as a young person, and you make all the mistakes. I don't know if there's such thing as a successful first relationship when you are a young person, and I can't believe that we talked. And I will tell you, on my end, I know my eyes were wet and not quite crying, but I was tearful as I talked to her. And I can't speak for her. I think she was going through some of it too, as well. And it was interesting. And I would encourage everyone watching this right now, if there is any way to create closure without doing harm, do it. Create closure without doing harm, then do it. And I found myself, naturally, there was something welling up inside of me as I talked to her. And that was, it was an apology and asking for forgiveness. And she said, yes, it's okay. Everything's okay. And I felt like a weight was lifted off of me. It was weird. It was very strange. Yeah. Do you need to do that? Somehow, some way. I'm not talking about like you just broke up with your wife or your husband like a year ago and you want to have that heart-to-heart talk. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking that's decades old. Do you have things that are decades old that you need to tie up? If you can do it without doing harm, I would recommend it. I was surprised that this turned out as good as it did. Not because of her, just because I never heard of things like this turning out well. This was, on a scale of 1 to 10, this was a 10 as far as success. And I'm glad we immediately went down the roads that could have, all the areas that hurt, all the sensitive spots we covered in that conversation. interesting. And I feel that much more unstuck because of that. And I do believe God somehow guided that, because conversations like that can go so wrong. But it had to happen naturally, somehow, some way. And I said to her, when was the last time we actually talked? And she said it was over 40 years ago. I think that's important to do. There are people who live without closure in everything. There's people who died and their relatives have no closure. There's people who disappear never to be seen again. There's relationships that just end where you don't know why they end. There's relationships that you ended and the other person doesn't know why they ended. Do you owe closure to people? Do you owe closure to people who, I don't want to say you've offended, but do you owe apologies and closure to someone? Another thing to think. One of the things that I mentioned to her was about we get a chance to write a new ending to the story. To literally write a happy ending rather than leaving this book that was written and the last chapter wasn't written. I felt like the last chapter of the book was written yesterday during that phone call. And it felt good. It felt good. Someone is coming to your mind right now who you need to tie things up, wrap them up, write a happy ending, finish the story. You know who that person is. If it's within your power to do so, first, do no harm and try to close it up. Finish your coffee.